Welcome and welcome back to the Scripture Re-Education Project. I'm Sister Scholar. So, we read about spreading abroad, Noah's mandates to his sons and his grandsons, and we're going to go from here. We're going to pray, and then we're going to look into this map situation a little bit more closely as to how some of the how the spreading happened, like who went where. We're just going to do a high level overview, but we're going to pray. Most High, we thank you for today. We thank you for endurance. We thank you for perseverance. We thank you for your voice. Help us to hear you more clearly and to be closer to your presence. Please forgive us of all of our sins and transgressions, not only our sins and transgressions, but those of our forefathers and even those that are around us. Help us not be influenced by evil and wickedness. Help us to live according to your will. Help us not to be distracted by the things that appear as the way to go, but help us to clearly see what your voice is saying to us and to understand what it is that you would have us to do. Please help us to be the light of the earth and the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Help us to be in your presence, to live according to your will and to do as you would have us to do. Help us to lay down our will for your own, and help us to be vigilant as to what it is that you need us to pay attention to and what it is that you are trying to speak to us in this moment. Help us to be more sensitive to what it is that you're saying to us personally, and help us to do whatever growth, reconstruction, and any hard work that we need to do. We ask that you would help us to be willing vessels for all that you would have us to do. By the authority of the land, we pray, hallelujah, so it shall be. Okay, so we're going to look at some maps today, and we're also going to take on some definitions like we've been doing. Okay, so we're going to look at some reference terms just to kind of get an idea of what's going on in Jubilees 8, 10 through 21. And we're going to look at 3 topographical terms, and then we're going to look at some other things. So mouth, and this is all from the 1828 Webster's Dictionary. The part or channel of a river by which its waters are discharged into the ocean or into a lake. The Mississippi and the Nile discharge their waters by several miles. So pretty much is where the river meets a body of water, whether it's an ocean or whether it's a lake, wherever. That's the mouth of a river. Then we're going to look at tongue. Tongue, a point or a large narrow strip of land projecting from the main into the sea or a lake. So you can also consider it as modern day would be like a peninsula. So it's how it's attached to the mainland, and then it ejects itself into the water. And then when we're looking at the term bosom, it's any enclosed place, the interior as the bosom of the earth or of the deep. So it's like it could be an enclosed place of water, it could be an enclosed place of land. That would be considered the bosom. Okay, so now we're going to look at, just based on the many maps that I looked into, this is kind of how I've kind of figured it out. So when we see the Rafa mountain regions, it's the Caucasus Mountains. Now the Caucasus Mountains aren't just limited, or originally, let me say that, weren't limited to that strip of that mountain range that sits between, I believe it's the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. It wasn't limited to that originally. It was considered the entire mountain range. The Caucasus may just be that particular portion of that mountain range, but Rafa was the entire mountain range. In the Tanis River is the River Tena. The Sea of Miat is Lake Meatis, and the Great Sea, at least in this section that we're reading, is the Mediterranean Sea. And Caruso is the Black Sea or the Euxine Sea. In the natural, the word actually means inhospitable as well. But Caruso, in I believe it was Turkish, means black water. So that's how I came to the fact that it was the Black Sea. And then we've already discussed the tongue being a peninsula, a bosom being an enclosed area, the mouth being the river opening into another body of water. And then when you see the Egyptian Sea, it's actually what was originally the Arabian Sea, not what they call the Arabian Sea now, but what was originally the Arabian Sea, also known as the Red Sea. And then the Gihon is the Nile River. And then we'll look at some maps to kind of figure things out. Okay, so we're going to read some more terms. So we're going to read what a river is. And I know you're like, I know what a river is. It's like, we do, but we don't, which is why we're reading it, okay? So a river is a current or a stream of fresh water flowing in a bed or a channel from its source into the sea. So from wherever it starts to the sea, okay? The great as well as the middle-sized rivers proceed either from a confluence of brooks and rivulets or from lakes. So it's saying that the big rivers as well as mid-sized rivers, they come from a collection. A confluence is a collection. I'm just put the word up here, it's flowing together. A confluence of brooks, rivulets, or from lakes. Okay? So it's a collection of waters coming together, and it brings force and brings it out. It says, but no river of considerable magnitude flows from one spring or one lake, but it is augmented by the acceleration of others, meaning that any river that is super forceful, there's a bunch of different waters feeding into it to have force for where it's going. So like how you see like old movies and stuff, and they're like follow the river, or people live by the river, because even if one water source gets cut off to that river, there's still other water sources feeding it. All right, now we're gonna look at some more terms. Okay, so Meatis or Palus Meatis is a sea of Turkey which divides Europe from Asia, extending from Crimea Tartary to the mouth of the river Don in Tanais. Okay, so remember we were talking about the river Tina being the river Tanais, but it's called Don or Tanais. Don, the name of two rivers, one very large, which after dividing Asia from Europe falls into the Palus Meatis. The other country is Aberdeen in Scotland, but we're only focusing on the one that falls into the Palus Meatis because it divides Asia from Europe. So we're focusing on the divisions of Shem's land. We're not really going to do everybody's land, because if you figure out where Shem's land is, the other ones are kind of easy to pinpoint. But this particular river, like it says here, Don, it divides Asia from Europe, and another name for it is Tanis. Okay, so now we're going to look at the Caucasus Mountains. 1 second. Okay, Caucasus originates from the ancient Greek, likely adopted from Scythian and other regional languages to describe the mountain range between the Black and Caspian Seas. It is believed to mean ice shining, white with snow, or according to other theories, the mountain of the seagull gateway to the steppes. Okay, and then we're going to look at the 1771 definition. Caucasus, a vast ridge of mountains running from the Lesser Asia through north of Persia to the East Indies. These acquire different names in several countries through which they pass. So like I said previously, when you look on maps today, the Caucasus Mountains is just a little strip that sits between the Black and Caspian Seas. But originally, it was the whole mountain range that divided Europe from Asia, which, when we're looking at Jubilees, it's the mountain range of Rafa. Okay? And the reason we're reading all this is because, like I said, it brings more truth and validity to his word and what he said. Okay, so we're going to come back to this book, this Geographical, Historical, and Commercial Grammar in the Present State of the Several Kingdoms of the World. And then, like I said previously, this was published in 1771. So we're mainly going to focus on the territories of Shem, and this is what they had to say about it in 1771. Asia. As Asia exceeds Europe and Africa in the extent of its territories, it is also superior to them in the serenity of its air, the fertility of its soil, and the deliciousness of its fruits, and fragrancy and balsamic qualities of its plants, spices and gums, and celebrity of its drugs, and the quantity, variety, and beauty and value of its gems, the richness of its metals, the fineness of its silks and cottons. It was in Asia, according to the sacred records, that the all-wise Creator planted the Garden of Eden, in which he formed the first man and the first woman, from whom the race of mankind was sprung. Asia became again the nursery of the world after the deluge, whence the descendants of Noah dispersed their various of their various colonies into all other parts of the globe. It was in Asia that the Most High placed his once favorite people, the Hebrews, whom he enlightened by revelations delivered by the prophets, and to whom he gave oracles of truth. It was here that the great and merciful work of our redemption was accomplished by his divine Son, and it was from hence that the light of his... We're going to actually come back to that. I'm going to read this because once I finish, it's not going to be on the page anymore. Okay, so here's the thing. They're saying back in 1771, even then, the land of Shem has the best of everything. And we already read that previously in the book of Jubilees, where it was saying, you know, he had just everything in his land was great. But right here, I'm going to note a couple things. It's saying that Eden is in his land. So it's not a mystery. They did not know where Eden was. And we're actually going to discuss that just a little bit. But Eden is also in the land of Shem. And then it says his once favorite people. They never stopped being his favorite people. When we get to the covenant, we'll discuss that replacement theology is not a thing. If he chooses you, he chooses you. If he makes a covenant, it's for a lifetime until he says otherwise. So, but we're going to keep going from here. All right, so Asia. It says his glorious gospel was carried with amazing rapidity into all the known nations by his disciples and followers. Here, the first Christian churches were founded, and the Christian faith miraculously propagated and watered with the blood of innumerable martyrs. It was in Asia that the first edifices were reared and the first empires founded, with all other parts of the globe were inhabited only by wild animals. On all these accounts, this quarter claims a superiority over the rest. It must be owned that the great change had happened in this part called Turkey. Turkey actually has three parts. It's Turkey part of Asia, Turkey part of Europe, and then there's the Turkey part of Africa. If you actually read this book, which has lost much of its ancient splendor, from the most populous to the best cultivated spot in Asia, is become a wild, uncultivated desert. The other parts of Asia continue much in their former condition, the soil being as remarkable for its fertility and most of its inhabitants for their indolence and I think effeminacy and luxury. This effeminacy is chiefly owing to the warmth of the climate, though in some measure heightened by custom and education, and the symptoms of it are more or less visible as the several nations are seated nearer and farther from the north. Hence, the Tartars, who live near the same latitudes with us, are as brave, hardy, strong, vigorous as any European nation. And, what is wanting in the robust frame of their bodies among the Chinese, Mongol Indians, and all the inhabitants of the more southern regions is in a great measure made up with them by the vicinity of their, vivacity of their minds, and ingenuity in various kinds of workmanship, which our most skillful mechanics have in vain endeavored to imitate. This vast extent of territory was successfully governed in the ancient times by the Assyrians, the Medes, the Persians, and the Greeks. But the immense regions in India and China were little known to Alexander or the conquerors of the ancient world. So they're saying not only are the lands superior, these people, even if they're not built the same way as other nations, some of them, as far as intellect and what they have as far as technology, their knowledge and all those types of things, were superior to the other nations that they have encountered. All right, we're going to also read this part right here. This is the same book, but there's an excerpt about China here. And it says right here, it says the name of China, right? The Chinese name is probably owing to a Chinese word signifying middle, from a notion that the natives had their country lay in the middle of the world, which we already saw in the book of Jubilees. It says Shem's lot was in the middle of the world. Okay, we're going to keep going. We're going to quickly cover this. I guess we can call it the fourth part of the world. I don't know what to call it, but we're going to cover this little map. But before we do that, we're going to look at what these two terms mean. So if you look at a lot of old maps, you'll see two terms. You'll see Oriental and Occidental. So Oriental means Eastern, situated in the East as the Oriental seas or countries. And then it says proceeding from the East as the Oriental radiations of the sun. And then it also describes the people group according to this time, because this is from the 1828 dictionary. Then we're going to skip down. Well, actually, you know what? I am going to read it because it's very specific. Because one of the things that we'll see in scripture a lot, it'll say the children of the East. So a native of the inhabitant of some eastern part of the world. And then I'm going to skip down Occidental, Western, opposite to the Oriental, pertaining to the western quarter of the hemisphere or some part of the of the earth westward of the speaker or the spectator. Occidental climates, Occidental pearl, Occidental gold. Okay, so we're going to look at this map right here. It says Descriptio Indiae Occidentalis per, and then it has the cartographer or the discoverer's name. So if you look right here, you see where it says, that same terminology right here. But if we look down, you see there's no islands right here in this image where they tell us today where the West Indies would be. It's only like a small cluster of islands right there, but it has a picture of the entire North and South America regions. And this map is from 1622. It has the entire North and South American regions because all of North and South America was considered the West Indies. So like I said, actually in the video that I previously recorded, but I haven't played it yet. So this area was considered still a part of India. This is Shem's land still. So if you're in North and South America, you're still in the lands of Shem. So, which is why everybody desires to be here. Most people vacation in certain places, and a lot of those places fall in the territories of Shem, whether it's over in Asia or here in the Americas. Most people, when you go to vacation, I'm not saying that's the only place that people vacation, but a lot of people, when they travel, they go to the territories of Shem because there's so many things, there's so much history and so many things to see. Like I say again, not that other places don't have those things. I'm just making a point here. All right, so we're going to keep moving on from here.
I'm Dr. John Fallow.
Okay, and you are the Organization of Cartographers for Social Equality.
Plain and simple, we'd like President Bartlett to aggressively support legislation that would make it mandatory for every public school in America to teach geography using the Peters projection map instead of the traditional Mercator.
Give me $200 and it's done.
Really?
No. Why are we changing maps?
Because, CJ, the Mercator projection has fostered European imperialist attitudes for centuries and created an ethnic bias against the Third World.
Really?
The German cartographer, Mercator, originally designed this map in 1569 as a navigational tool for European sailors.
The map enlarges areas at the poles to create straight lines of constant bearing or geographic direction.
So it makes it easier to cross an ocean.
But
Yes.
it distorts the relative size of nations and continents.
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes. Look at Greenland.
Okay.
Now look at Africa.
Okay.
The two land masses appear to be roughly the same size.
Yes.
Would it blow your mind if I told you that Africa is in reality 14 times larger?
Yes?
Here we have Europe, drawn considerably larger than South America. When it's 6.9 million square miles, South America is almost double the size of Europe's 3.8 million.
Alaska appears 3 times as large as Mexico, when Mexico is larger by 0.1 million square miles.
Germany appears in the middle of the map when it's in the northernmost quarter of the Earth.
Wait. Relative size is one thing, but you're telling me that Germany isn't where we think it is?
Nothing's where you think it is.
Where is it?
I'm glad you asked. The Peters projection.
It has fidelity of axis.
Fidelity of position.
East-west lines are parallel and intersect north-south axes at right angles.
What the hell is that?
It's where you've been living this whole time. Should we continue?
Uh-huh.
So, you're probably wondering what all of this has to do with social equality.
No, I'm wondering where France really is.
Guys, we want to thank you very much for coming in.
Hang on, we're gonna finish this.
Okay.
What do maps have to do with social equality, you ask?
She asked.
Salvatore Natoli of the National Council for Social Studies argues, in our society, we unconsciously equate size with importance and even power.
When third world countries are misrepresented, they're likely to be valued less. When Mercator maps exaggerate the importance of Western civilization, when the top of the map is given to the northern hemisphere and the bottom is given to the southern, then people will tend to adopt top and bottom attitudes.
But wait, where else could you put the northern hemisphere but on the top?
On the bottom.
How?
Like this.
Yeah, but you can't do that.
Why not?
Because it's freaking me out.
We're gonna look at this map really quickly. So this is actually how different nations view the Earth at different times. So we're gonna read the passage again in Jubilees 8 that we've been working out of, and we're gonna try to figure out what is where, just based off of what the map is saying. So let me just see here. My pen work. Okay, my pen's working. Okay, so if you look right here, we're going to actually go right here to the bottom. You'll see a lot of old maps that are set up like this. So it'll be, see here's Africa, you'll see Europe here, and then you see Asia here. So that's pretty much the land allotment. It's really set up. We've already determined the Earth's not set up the way we've been told it is, but we're gonna actually run through fairly quickly how everything is set up. So I want you to notice this right here. Do you see how down here it's really far into Asia and it's called the Caucasus Mountains down here? From what I've been reading, and just like we read previously when we were reading about the Caucasus Mountains, it was saying it was a large mountain range, and it, different parts call it different things. And part of what it says, it's at the very top of Persia. But if you look at a map now, the Caucasus Mountains sit between the Black and the Caspian Sea, which would be this mountain range right here. So I believe all of this at one point in time were considered just a collection of mountains. So they might just call all of them the Caucasus Mountains or all of them the mountain range of Rafa. So we're going to look at Shem's land, and then we can just figure out where everyone else's land is laid out just based off of that. So right here, it says that it starts at the Rafa Mountains or the Caucasus Mountains. And then it says it follows the Tina River. So we're going to look right here. Here's the Tanay River. But it says his land goes from the middle of the Caucasus, but also the mouth of the Tanay River. So it would be right here. Right here. That's where we're starting. Then it says that, sorry, I lost my place for a second. Then it says it goes west. So we're starting here and we're going to go west. And it extends until it reaches the waters of the abyss, out of which this river goes out and pours its water into the Sea of Miat, which is Lake Miatis, which is right here. So this river pours out, it comes out here into Lake Miatis. And I know, but I know a lot of this isn't labeled, but I'm going to give you a map that is labeled after we get done with this. Okay, so we're starting here. Here's Rafa Mountains. Here's the River Tina, and then here's the Sea of Miat, right? And it pours out here. And then it says, and all that is towards the north is Japheth. So anything from the range from here, everything up here is Japheth. And then it says everything in the south is Shem. And then from there, it says, it extends until it reaches Carousel. So we're going to keep going from here. So we came from here and it extends until it reaches Carousel, which is the Black Sea, because we've already said Carousel means dark or black water. And this is the center of the tongue or the peninsula. So right here, here's the tongue. Here's the center of it, right here. We come down, we draw a straight line down here. Now we're at the center of the tongue, okay? So we're gonna follow this around. in the center of the tongue, which is the peninsula, which is also called Asia Minor. And it says the land that looks towards the south, because here's the south right here. It's looking towards the south. His land extends along the Great Sea, and it extends in a straight line until it reaches the west of the tongue. So it goes in this direction of the Great Sea. It extends until it reaches the west, which is right here, of the tongue. And then it looks towards the south. And it says, for the sea named of the tongue is of the Egyptian sea. So it actually extends in a great, I'm sorry, I missed a part. It extends along the Mediterranean Sea right here. And you know how we usually see that little triangle right here when we look at more modern maps that sit between what you call it, Europe, I'm sorry, Africa and Asia. But right here, if we look, this, here we go, we have another tongue right here. This is another tongue. It extends through this. It's going to come down this way, but it's also going to double back. So we're going to extend right here to the Red Sea, which originally was the Arabian Sea. If you look at modern maps now, the Arabian Sea is like out here, but originally on an older map that I'm going to show you, this was the Red Sea right here, and then down here it was considered the Arabian Sea. But it's also the Egyptian Sea, because you see Egypt is right here. So it says his portion, verse 14, I'm sorry, his portion extends along the Mediterranean, and it extends in a straight line until it reaches the west of the tongue that looks towards the south. So here's the west of this tongue that looks towards the south. For this is the sea named the tongue of the Egyptian Sea, or the Arabian Sea. And then it says, and then it turns from here towards the south, towards the mouth of the Mediterranean shore and its waters, and extends west to Africa. So it's going back this way towards the Mediterranean, and it extends up. And then it talks about, in verse 15, it extends until it reaches the water of the Gihon, which is the Nile. So I'm going to just draw it out for you quickly, just to make it easy to understand. Backing up just a little bit. We started up here, right? His land goes like this. River Tanis, Miat. We come across Carousel. We're going to come to the west of the tongue. We come down this way. I mean, we really could just come straight this way. All of his land is really on the east side of the Nile. And then it comes this way. It says Eden, and then we're going to discuss Eden in a second. And it comes back around, and it hits this mountain region again. So this is how the land of Shem is laid out, like this. And these mountains divide. These are division markers. So his land sits in here. So this is Shem's land. This is Ham's land, Japheth's land. Okay, we're about to do it again. We're going to, and this map is from 1360. Watch, we're going to do it again. We're going to find the River Tina, right here, Tanais, River Tina. Here's Asia Minor. Here's Noah's Ark, those types of things. Here's Asia Minor. We're going to come across the Mediterranean. Here's the Mediterranean. We came out here to the Sea of Miat in the Black Sea. We're going to come straight across. We're going to keep going. Now we've crossed the Mediterranean Sea. We came in a straight line. Here's the Nile. We hit the Gihon, which is the Nile. And now we're going to come straight up and around. That's Shem's land. Now you see right here all the things that are in Shem's land. Noah's Ark, Zidon, Arabia, Babylon. It says metropolis, but I'm guessing that is Mesopotamia, Media, Assyria, Persia. All of these things are India. All of these things are in his land. But you see right here at the top, you see Adam and Eve, that's India. It's saying India, but Eden, excuse me, not India. Eden does sound like India. Eden, India. Eden is in his land, is a part of his land allotment, which we read about, or we will read about, depending on where I put this in the video, in Shem's land allotment. And they knew where Eden was. This map is from 1360, and then the maps start to change. Look, we can do it again. Hit it here. Look, You want to start here? It doesn't name the river per se. We're going to come right through here. Here's your Caucasus Mountains, divide into two mountains. We're going to come down here where the mouth meets, and we're just going to follow it around. Here's your Asia Minor right here. You want to follow it down. You want to follow it down through the Mediterranean. Come straight down. Excuse me. Around. Collect all these islands. Come back up. Hit the mountain region. There you go. Like, it's in here. Land of Shem. And you can figure out everything else. I do want you to pay attention to the fact that it says the land of Khazars here. I just thought that was interesting in case, that's your thing. All right. So, one more time, because I like beating dead horses, like I said previously. We're going to look right here. Shem's land's in the middle between these two. It's always in the middle. That's why it's saying in the middle. He's in the middle of these two, but he's also in the middle of the earth, and we're going to discuss that in a moment. But look, here we go. River Tanis again. River Tina, come down. It flows into Miat. Black Sea, come down through the Mediterranean. Come down through the Gihon. Come around it. Bring it around town. Come around. We know all of this right here is his. And then we're going to hit the mountain range and close it up. Oop. Close it up. That's his land. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on from here. Okay. So out of all of the maps that I've looked at, this by far is my favorite. Okay. So one thing to note is north is south and south is north. Just like we saw the one map where Asia was at the top, this map, Africa is at the top and Europe is at the bottom, which I'm going to play a clip. I don't know if I'm going to put it before, but it's a clip from, I believe it was a show called The West Wing, and it talks about how the maps were distorted and certain things. Okay, but look right here, because there were certain things, geography was a subject that I actually was always interested in, but what never made sense to me was why Upper Egypt was at the bottom and then Lower Egypt was at the top. And then things like the Netherlands are at the top of the map, but nether means bottom or under. So, start to consider certain terms that actually still stick and are the maps the way that you think they are. Okay, so right here, we're going to look really quickly. Everything is upside down. So like I said, east is west, north is south, but we can still figure things out. We know what we're looking for. So we're going to zoom in right here. So right here is the Caspian Sea. You can see this right here. Here's the Caspian. Ooh, where's my marker? Got me. Okay. Here's the Caspian Sea. And then we're going to look at, let's change the colors. Let's be festive. Let's change the colors. Okay. So here's the Caspian Sea. Here's the Black Sea, which is also called the Euxine Sea, right? But we're going to find our, I shouldn't have done that, but we'll figure it out. Okay. So right here, remember, we're looking for the river that empties out. We're looking for the river Thames or the river Don or the river Tina, right? That empties out into here, into Mutis. I'm going to follow this down. Look at this right here. Sorry about the blur. That's it right here. We're going to follow this river. I hate that it doesn't keep it, but all right. Quickly, we're going to follow this river right here. We're in the right spot. We follow this river. It starts down here. We're going to follow this river. So we know where Shem's land is roughly starting. Now on the other maps that we saw, the Caucasus Mountains meets this area. But let's look right here. The Caucasus Mountains are right here. Here's the Caspian Sea. These are the Caucasus Mountains right here. As you can see from the verbiage right here, Caucasus, Caucasus, right here, even Caucasus. These are the Caucasus Mountains right here. So the land allotment starts pretty much where these two areas meet. So right here. Everything down here, everything to the north, which is the south on this map, belongs to Japheth. Everything to the south, which is the north on this map, belongs to Shem. Okay, so we're going to highlight our points and we're going to keep pushing. All right, so Tanis River, we're between the Caspian and the Black Sea. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to zoom back in for you so you can see. So right here, Caucasus Mountains. So where these two meet, which would be about right here. And then we saw the Tanis empties out into Meatis. And then it takes us into the Black Sea, which is Marmara. And then it says we're going to come around the tongue. Here's the tongue of land. Here's this peninsula, which is Asia Minor. So we came here. I'm going to zoom it out. We came, come on now. We came here. And we're going to skirt around here. And then right here, we're going to go in a straight line. Across here, right? Straight line of the west. Here's the west of the tongue right here, which is east. The west of the tongue right here. Here's the Mediterranean Sea. And I apologize if I'm going really fast. Here's the Mediterranean Sea. And then when we look right here, here's Egypt. This says Gihon, which is the Nile. And we're going to zoom out. Here's Gihon. Here's the Nile. We follow it up. Because these rivers aren't just rivers to flow, they're land divisions. These mountain ranges and rivers serve multiple purposes, and I'm going to explain that in a minute because I don't want to go too long on it. I know it's probably long already. All right, but this is kind of where his land allotment stops, over here on this side, on this east side, which is why Most High has these mountain ranges here as a division. Mer Rubrum, which is the Red Sea, and you see right here, this is the Arabian Sea, right here, or the Arabian Ocean. Right here is the Persian Ocean, Persian Sea. But like I said, things aren't what they once were. And then here's the other tongue of land that we were talking about earlier, right here. Okay? So, Shem's land comes around, starts here, and you can find this map on the David Rumsey collection. But it starts here at the Caucasus Mountains. It makes its way around to, we'll just call it the side for now, because it's the west of the tongue of Asia Minor, and it comes straight down in a straight line across the Mediterranean, hits the Gihon, and also it comes in the direction of the Egyptian Sea, which was the Arabian Sea, which was the Red Sea over here, and his land extends all of this, and it comes down, it comes down, and then it says it comes over and around like this. And then we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna zoom in on some things in a moment, and I'll show you some stuff. And then it comes down, and you can't really see it, but let me zoom in. There's a whole mountain range right here. So it connects to the mountains, and that's where his land ends. Okay? And if you want, you could just kind of bring it across. Bring it across like that. And then that's Shem's land. Now, all right, I'm going to show you some stuff. This map is really fun with doing Bible stuff. You can figure out a lot of stuff off this map. Watch. Okay, we're going to zoom in right here. We're just going to focus on the lands of Shem. So if you look right here, it says Asia, but we're going to zoom in right here. Sorry, it's a little choppy. If you pull this up on David Rumsey collection, it won't be so grainy. You see right here, Ark of Noah, talking about this is Noah's Ark right here on this mountain. This is Noah's Ark. Then when you look right here, it says, sorry, it's blurry. It says Ararat, as in Mount Ararat, where Noah's Ark rested. Then when you come a little bit further down, you see Mesopotamia. Sorry, I did that. Let me do that. Okay. You see Mesopotamia. Then when you come over here, you see Syria. When you come over here, you see the Euphrates. Like I said, I'm not saying these maps are right because things aren't always where they've told us that they are. But you see Assyria, you see Chaldea, you see Media, you see the Tigris River right here. Mesopotamia again, you see Arabia. Where we at? Here's Delhi, India Primer. And I'm going to come back to why that's significant in a second. Here's Persia, right down here. There was another one I was looking for. Hold on, give me 1 second. Persia again. Here. I guess they have, their territory extended. I think I'm overlooking it. I overlooked it. Yep, I did. Okay, you see right here, Chaldea, where Abraham's from. You see right here, Babylon. No, I didn't quite do that right. Babylon, right there. Babylonica. All right here. Everything that we're reading about in Scripture, and then most importantly, Judea, Jerusalem, Damascus. Okay? And then as you can see, a good portion of the territory allotted to Abraham when we get to Abraham is in Africa. Okay. All right. I just thought that was a lot of interesting stuff on here. And if you really get a chance to look at this map, a lot of this stuff is built out. Like there are kingdoms already set up here because remember, the Nephilim were building cities and everything. So post-flood, all they really had to do was just go and acquire a city. It wasn't that they had to really like build from scratch. It says they seized upon the city. So they just went to where a city was and they said, okay, well, this is our land allotment. We're going to set up shop here. It just so happened that Shem had the best of everything. He had the best architecture. He had the best food. He had the best, climate. He had the best everything. But you see, Poland, Prussia, like the king of Prussia. You can do a lot of Russia. And you see Tartaria. And the only reason I'm bringing up Tartaria is I think out here in some of these regions, and this is just my opinion, I'm not saying anything like, okay, I got scripture to back it up. I'm just giving you my opinion. Out here, what I'm surmising is these unwanted, uninhabitable places like Siberia and stuff, those Genesis 6:4 people, the people that aren't people, I think they were banished to these areas. And then everyone else lived out here. And then eventually they infiltrated and moved out from where they were into other lands. And if your question is regarding North and South America, those are still called India. All of North and South America was called West India, not just what was in the Caribbean. All of it was called West India. So when Columbus came and he called the people Indians, it wasn't a misnomer. It wasn't like, oh, he made a mistake. He didn't know he was talking. No, they're still Indians. They're still descendants of Shem. And we'll discuss that as we go. Not this one, but in the future episode, we'll discuss that. I realized I forgot one part. Okay, so like I said previously, here. Okay, so remember, Eden is in the land of Shem, right? We've already established all this down here is Shem's land. Eden's in the land of Shem. I'm going to show you something on that other map that I really like. So if you look on this map right here, okay, and you see how here it's still in the middle, his land is still in the middle of the earth, and then if you take it a step further, like Jerusalem and everything is, I'm going to let it clear up for a second, is really in the center of the earth. But we're going to back out just for a moment. And we saw how on that other map, it was at the top. Look right here. Let this says Mountain of Adam. And it also calls it Salem, which Eden may potentially be on this island. There are other maps where it looks like there's 4 rivers coming out of it. I'm not saying I know it's for certain. Like I said, not all the maps can be believed, but I'm just saying. But if you look at this map really closely, it has a lot of waterways on it. And I think one of the things, because the times that we live in, we forget how much, I mean, not that we don't use water for transportation now, we forget how much, how often people use waterways and those types of things to be able to get from one place to another quite frequently and quite easily. So you have all these different currents going in different directions to take you. The current could take you one time a year in one direction, one time a year in another direction. Now, based on this map, for him to say spread abroad makes a lot more sense than the map that we've been given to spread abroad. How difficult on a modern map would it be for everyone to get to their land allotment, unless the land is set up something like this, where you can just ride a current where you need to go. And it's set up that you're divided from each other by mountains. It's a lot more difficult to cross a mountain than it is to cross a river, depending on the veracity of the river. And it also is something to think about. Ham's land is hot. Japheth's land is cold. Shem's land is neither hot nor cold, but a blended of cold and heat. And it's an ideal temperature right here in the center. And one of the things to realize too is the climates protect them from each other. So Japheth's climate being cold protects him from Ham. And Ham's climate being hot protects him from Japheth. Shem is kind of a sitting duck, but for the most part, there's a lot of things, and the climate isn't just about temperature change, it's also about protection from other nations. It's a form of protection as well. All right, I just wanted to point that out. Jubilees 8:22 through 24, and Ham came forth in the second portion beyond Gihon towards the south of the right of the garden, and extends towards the south, and extends to all the mountains of fire, and extends towards the west of the sea of Atel, and extends towards the west till it reaches the sea of Mauk, that sea, into which everything which is not destroyed descends. And it goes forth towards the north and limits Gadir, and it goes forth to the coast of the waters and the seas of the waters and the great sea till it draws near to the river Gihon, and goes along the river Gihon till it reaches the right of the Garden of Eden. And this is the land which came forth for him as his portion. He would occupy forever for himself and his sons and to their generations forever. Now, one of the things to look here, and it talks about, where was it? It extends to all the mountains of fire, because the lands of Ham are hot. Okay, and we're going to keep going. Jubilees 8:25 through 30, and for Japheth came forth the third portion beyond the river Tina to the north of the outflow of its water extends northeasterly to the whole region of Gog, and to the country of the east thereof, and it extends northerly to the north, and extends to the mountain of Kelt towards the north, and towards the sea of Mauk, and it goes forth to the east of Gadir, as far as the region of the waters of the sea, and it extends until it approaches the west of Pharaoh, and it returns towards Apharag, and it extends easterly to the waters of the sea of Miat, and it extends to a region of the river Tina in a northeasterly direction until it approaches the boundary of its waters towards the Mount Rapha, and it turns around towards the north. And this is the land which came forth for Japheth and his sons, also the portion of his inheritance which he should possess for himself and his sons for their generations forever. 5 great islands in a great land in the north, but it is cold, and the land of Ham is hot, and the land of Shem is neither hot nor cold, but it is of a blended cold and heat. I'm going to read that again. So Japheth's land is cold. Ham's land is hot. Shem's land is neither hot nor cold, but it is of blended cold and heat, meaning Shem's land has a temperate climate. It has both heat and it has cold. It has extreme. If you live in certain states, you get both really, really hot seasons and you get really, really cold seasons, especially if you live on the East Coast. So if you live on the East Coast of the United States, you get both summer, full on summer, okay? And you get full on winter. There are certain parts that don't necessarily get as much of a winter as other places, and there are some places that don't get as much of a summer. But if you live in a particular region, you get full on summer, you get full on winter, okay? He has a blend of cold and heat. So, just saying, okay? Something to think about. Like I said, not everything is where we've been told that it is. Just something to think about, okay? All right, let's keep going. Jubilees 9, 1 through 6. And Ham divided amongst his sons. The first portion came forth for Cush towards the east, to the west of him for Mitzrayim, and to the west of him for Put, and to the west of him, and to the west thereof the sea for Canaan. And Shem also divided amongst his sons. The first portion came forth for him and his sons in the east of the river Tigris, till it approaches the east of the whole land of India, and on the Red Sea, and on its coast, and the waters of Dedan, and all the mountains of Mebri, and Elah, and all the land of Susan, and all the lands and all that is on the side of Pharnic, and the Red Sea, and the river Tenus. And for Ashur came forth the second portion in the land of Ashur, and Nineveh, and Shinar, into the border of India, and it ascends into the skirts of the river. And for Arphaxad came forth the third portion of all the land of the region of the Chaldees to the east of the Euphrates, bordering on the Red Sea, and all the waters of the desert, close to the tongue of the sea, which are towards Egypt, in the land of Lebanon, and Sinir, and Ammana, in the border of the Euphrates. And for Aram there came forth the portion in the land of Mesopotamia, between Tigris and Euphrates, in the north of the Chaldees, to the border of the mountains of Ashur, in the land of Arara. And there came forth for Lud the fifth portion of the mountains of Ashur, and all appertaining to them, till it reaches the great sea, until it reaches the east of Ashur and his brother. Okay, so one of the things is I realized the land of, it looks like Susan, but Susan might be Sudan. I just thought about that. Okay, so he's laying out the land allotments. This is for my geography people, okay? Whose lands are where, roughly. Like I said, the maps aren't perfect, and not everything is open to us, but the Father can show you one thing on one map, and it'll lead you down a rabbit hole to be able to find the truth. So this is for my geography people. All right, let's keep going. Jubilees 9, 7 through 13. And Japheth also divided the land of his inheritance amongst his sons. And the first portion came forth for Gomer, to the east, to the north of the, from the north side of the river Tina. And in the north there came forth for Magog, in the inner portions of the north, until it reaches to the sea of Ma'at. And for Madai came forth his portion, that he should possess from the west of his two brothers to the islands, to the coast of the islands. And for Javan came forth a portion, every island in the islands which are towards the border of Love. And for Tubal there came forth the fifth portion in the midst of the tongue that approaches towards the border of the portion of Love, and the second tongue in the region beyond the second tongue into the third tongue. And for Meshach came forth the sixth portion in the region beyond the third tongue, until it approaches the east of Gadir. And for Tyrus came forth the seventh portion, 4 great islands in the midst of the sea, which reached to the portion of Ham. And the islands of Kamatori came out by lot for the sons of Arphaxad as his inheritance. Now, one of the things that's interesting is it's looking like the larger land allotments go to Gomer and Magog based on this. And if you start looking at old maps, you'll kind of see that that's kind of how it, even the map that we looked at previously, that's kind of how it it lays out. So you'll see, the Gauls or it'll say Gallus or Glacia or Glaci, and then that's Gomer. Like their land allotment was quite vast, and as was Magog, which you'll see them as the Scythians. You'll see their land allotments are very large. All right, we're gonna keep going. All right, last slide, y'all. I know this was rough. All right, Jubilees 9:14 through 15 in this passage is so important. And thus the sons of Noah divided unto their sons in the presence of Noah their father, and he bound them all by an oath, imprecating a curse on everyone that sought to seize the portion which had not fallen to him by his lot. And they all said, so be it, for themselves and their sons forever, throughout their generations, till the day of judgment, on which the Most High shall judge them with the sword and with fire, for all unclean wickedness of their errors, wherewith they have filled their earth with transgressions and uncleanness and fornication and sin. So all of our forefathers enjoined an oath, saying they cannot steal the land that goes to another people. Okay? They're all bound by this oath, imprecating a curse on everyone that sought to seize the portion which had not fallen to him by his lot. So any form of colonization, no matter what nation it has been or what nation they are colonizing, if it is not their land allotment, there is a curse that is attached to those people because of that theft. Okay? So you come in and you set up shop in somebody else's land and you don't belong there. It's different if they, invite you to come and they say you could you could live amongst us. But when you come and you take it by force, that's problematic, okay? You're not allowed to do that. We seeing it happen in real time in South Africa right now, excuse me. You're not allowed to do that. Because when Messiah comes back, if you're not where you're supposed to be, and your forefathers took it by force, and you had your forefathers were tricked into taking someone else's land allotments by force, it's a problem. And I know you're like, well, I didn't know. A lot of us don't know the things that our forefathers have attached to themselves to, that are long-lasting things. But it also is your business to figure out what those things are, and that's why prayer and fasting is so important. Okay, we're going to stop here, and then we're going to pick up again next time.